Canada has seen a sharp increase in the volume of temporary residents in recent years, from a rise of international students to more foreign workers filling job vacancies to those fleeing wars and natural disasters. To be clear from the start, temporary residents enrich Canada's economic, social, and cultural fabric. Canada's future economic vibrancy depends on those we bring in today, whether we like that or not. Today, Canada's labour market is recovering, or pretty much has recovered from the pandemic, and employers are experiencing less difficulty filling jobs. And Canada, by all accounts, has done a singularly good job compared to its peers in making the workplace and workforce younger. And while many temporary foreign workers are filling the needed job vacancies in critical industries like construction workers, and will be needed for the future for that, to build new homes, for early childhood educators to teach our kids, and healthcare professionals to treat patients. However, changes are needed to make the system more efficient and more sustainable.
Pour comprendre quelles solutions nous devons mettre en œuvre, nous devons d'abord comprendre.
To understand what solutions we need to implement, first we need to understand how we got here.
Umbrella term for a large number of streams and programs under IRCC management, and they can be chiefly broken down into a few categories. 42% are international students, 9% temporary foreign workers, and the temporary foreign workers program that Randy will speak about, and 44% are temporary workers under the International Mobility Program, which includes further specifics such as those postgraduate work permits, spousal work permits, students or workers, and those are temporarily visiting Canada under youth mobility agreements, as well as workers arriving through intercompany transfers or arrivals through special humanitarian pathways, including those fleeing Ukraine. And the program is composed generally of 26% postgraduate work permit holders, 9% spouses of students, 10% reciprocal youth exchange agreements, in turns allows Canadians to go work in other countries, 12% in spouses of skilled workers, and 26% arrivals, which is growing, through programs like Hewitt and other special humanitarian pathways. And then finally, 17% for intercompany transfers, trade agreements, among others. Examinons donc ceci en détail. On the work,
Let's break this down.
it's important to acknowledge that the pandemic left labor shortages in almost every sector of the Canadian economy. Provinces and businesses need us to bring more workers to fill these shortages, and we used all the tools at our disposal to prevent a breakdown in the economy. And we were very successful in that recovery. Employment is at 1.2 million jobs above pre-COVID numbers of February 2020. And the unemployment rate is at 5.8% of February 2024. As such, we've more than recovered all the jobs lost during COVID, and now at 138% of that number.
En ce qui concerne les étudiants, entre autres,
With regard to students, the chronic underfunding of post-secondary education and unscrupulous actors looking to profit off of vulnerable individuals led to exponential growth in international students, with the knock-on effect on postgraduate work permits and spousal open work permits for students and spouses. Faced with unprecedented levels of conflicts, economic and political upheaval, human rights abuses, and climate change, we continue to see record numbers of displaced people. The increasing use of temporary public policies to support the government's responses to such crises, which Canadians rightly expect, contributes to growth.
For example, as part of our response to Ukraine, we will have close to 300,000 arrivals of Ukrainians in Canada by the end of the month. To be clear, these are important global commitments to Canadians, and Canadians should unabashedly be proud of this. At the same time, there should be an honest conversation about what the rise in international migration means for Canada as we plan ahead. Finally, we can't ignore the pressures created by the historic volume of asylum seekers in Canada, consistent with worldwide trends. And ensuring a well-resourced system that can quickly and fairly process asylum claims is critical to managing volume of temporary residents.
à mesure que les conditions mondiales changent,
As global conditions change, as our labor market tightens, and as the types of skill sets we look for in our future workforce evolves, so should our policies. We need to be more strategic in how we assess demand and the international students and temporary foreign workers that we are welcoming into the country. We need to ensure the number of temporary residents entering the country is at a sustainable level, while upholding our humanitarian commitments and supporting the priorities of our labor market.
This question is, what have we done so far? And the good news is, because there is some, we've already taken some big stride forward on this front. And earlier this year, as you may recall, we imposed a 2-year cap for new international students to address integrity issues in that program. We also restricted eligibility for postgraduate work permits and work permits to spouses of students. Recently as well, we announced the partial visa requirement for Mexican travelers. As we continue to see the impacts of these measures over the next few years, we'll continue to adjust those approaches as well if necessary. What's next? Pour poursuivre le travail et assurer une croissance.
To build on that work and ensure sustainable growth in the future, our programs that welcome temporary residents must reflect the needs and changing demands of the labor market.
I've directed my department to conduct a review of existing programs that bring in temporary workers, and we're undertaking work to better align streams with labor market needs and weed out abuses in the system. I'll be working closely along my colleague, Minister Boissonnault, in those streams that fall under the Temporary Foreign Worker Program, notably. At the same time, we must ensure that robust pathways to permanent residencies for those who wish to make Canada their home in the long term and avoid the pitfalls of an economy that is built solely on temporary workers. This means not only setting targets for the number of permanent residents we welcome, but also setting targets for temporary residents. So starting this fall, for the first time, we will expand the immigration levels plan to include both temporary resident arrivals and permanent resident arrivals. The latter category is something, as you know, we are doing already. Cela permettra de renforcer l'alignement entre la planification.
This will help strengthen the alignment between immigration planning, community capacity, and labor market needs, and support predictable population growth.
To set these targets, I'll be convening a meeting with my provincial and territorial counterparts, as well as other relevant ministers, in early May. Provinces and territories know their unique labor needs and capacity, and need to assume responsibility for the people that they bring in as well. This will be an opportunity for us to come together as partners to develop plans in realigning our temporary worker streams and bringing the people we need to build homes that we are short of, for healthcare workers that we need to ensure those hospitals are properly staffed, and early childhood educators we need to ensure people can work. Nous reconnaissons pleinement que cela.
We fully recognize that this can only happen with the input of provinces and territories and their knowledge of their capacities to provide vital social services to growing communities.
The nominee program provides provinces and territories with an opportunity to address their specific economic needs while distributing the benefits of economic immigration and nominating individuals for permanent residency. As part of our efforts for temporary residents to transition to permanent residency, we'll have more domestic draws for us, for the feds, and ask provinces and territories taking part in the provincial nominee program to do the same with their allocations. This will realign our efforts and provide a pathway for those who are in the country who wish to stay and contribute to the country and to the economy. Recently, Canada's temporary resident volume has increased significantly, now reaching up to 2.5 million, or 6.2% of our population in 2023. Therefore, in our levels planning, we'll be including a target in order to reach an adequate volume of temporary residents that we can welcome. As a starting point, we are targeting a decrease in our temporary residents population to 5% over the next 3 years. This target will be, of course, finalized in the fall after consulting our provincial and territorial counterparts and as part of our annual levels planning. Au fur et à mesure que je poursuivrai.
As I continue these conversations with other levels of government, cabinet colleagues, business leaders, and settlement providers, I will continue to provide updates for Canadians on this complex situation. However, the one thing to take away from these comments, it's this.
We'll continue to benefit from the important contributions newcomers make each and every day to us. We want every new family and resident to be set up for the success and be able to access the services that they need. Our ultimate goal is to ensure a well-managed, sustainable immigration system built on needs rather than profitability at the cost of integrity and sustainability. Thank you. Merci. Je passe maintenant la parole à mon collègue.
I'll hand over the floor to my colleague, Mr. Boissonneau. Thank you.
I'm very pleased to join Mr. Miller today. Canada's labour market has been through some rapid, often unpredictable changes over the past few years. And as Minister of Jobs, it's my first responsibility to help workers and employers navigate those challenges. And if you go back to the tail end of the pandemic, our economy saw historically low unemployment rates coupled with historically high labour shortages. And so what this did is it created an immense challenge for employers to fill key roles in their businesses, which had an effect of slowing our economic growth. And so to address that reality and to support small businesses, we introduced time-limited measures to the temporary foreign worker program, essentially to help fill those labor gaps. La pandémie a créé un immense défi pour les employeurs.
The pandemic created a huge challenge for employers who were unable to fill key positions in their businesses, slowing our economic growth. To remedy this situation and to support small businesses in particular, we introduced a series of measures under the Temporary Foreign Workers Program that, for a limited time, helped fill these labor shortages.
Who leave their families, travel to Canada to help take care of our loved ones, work in our businesses, pick the food that we eat, many jobs that, as a country, frankly, we rely on. And I want to make my thanks clear to these incredible workers. We are now in a different economic picture. With the gap between unemployment and job vacancies closing, a tightening labor market, some of these measures are no longer needed. We're actually seeing signs that Canadian and permanent resident workers are eager to find jobs to help make ends meet. And seeing this change, we know it's now time to ease our reliance on foreign workers and begin ramping down certain temporary measures that we put in place in 2022. So as of May 1st, the first change that we are implementing is reducing the amount of temporary foreign workers entering Canada in certain sectors. À partir du 1er mai, le premier changement.
As of May 1st, the first change we are implementing is reducing the number of temporary foreign workers entering Canada in certain targeted sectors.
Employers identified in the 2022 Workforce Solution Roadmap will have a reduction from 30% to 20% of their workforce come in through the Temporary Foreign Worker Program under the low wage stream. And let me say, I don't like the name of that stream. We're going to work on changing that. That's for a future press conference. Now, the exception to what I just said is for the construction and healthcare sectors. As Minister Miller outlined, these are areas that have critical labor shortages, and with the ambition that our government has for building 2.5 million homes over the next 10 years, we need to have every single worker we can in the construction sector, and to make sure that our healthcare sector has the workers it needs. That exemption will be in place for occupations in the healthcare sector. Tous les employeurs identifiés dans le plan d'action pour les employeurs et la main-d'œuvre verront une réduction de 30%.
There will be a 30% drop of the workforce through the low-wage stream of the Temporary Foreign Worker Program, except for in the areas of construction and healthcare.
Construction and healthcare, employers will continue to be allowed to hire up to 30% of their workforce through the low-wage stream of the Temporary Foreign Worker Program until at least August 31 of this year. Les secteurs clés encore confrontés à une pénurie de main-d'œuvre, soit la construction et le domaine de la...
In key sectors still facing labor shortages, construction and healthcare, employers will continue to be allowed to hire up to 30% of their workforce through the low-wage stream of the Temporary Foreign Worker Program until
economy and workforce change, so do the measures and the policies we need to implement to ensure the greatest access and opportunities for employers and workers. Now, since these are temporary measures, we will continue to monitor and adapt to current conditions. For agriculture sector employers that meet all of the labor market impact assessment requirements, their cap exemption remains unchanged. This does not affect agriculture sector employers or their workers. Other sectors experiencing seasonal demand, like in fishing and seafood, food processing and tourism, will continue to benefit from a one-time-a-year seasonal cap exemption for work duration up to 270 days, as we introduced in 2022. The second change is that as of May 1st, the time for which an LMIA is valid, that's the Labor Market Impact Assessment, will be reduced to 6 months from the current 12 months. So à partir du 1er mai, le deuxième changement que nous...
So the second change is that as of May 1st, the validity period of new applications for Labor Market Impact Assessment, or LMIAs, will be reduced to 6 months from the current 12 months.
So to be clear, employers who are participating in the recognized employer pilot are not affected by this change. Now, the LMIA is an essential process, an essential document that a Canadian employer needs to go through and needs to get before hiring a foreign worker. The purpose of the LMIA is for the employer to show a need for a foreign worker and to confirm that no Canadian worker, permanent resident, refugee, or asylum seeker is able to do that job. And by shortening the validity period, we're going to make sure that the temporary foreign worker program is being used with the most up-to-date and accurate labor market information. En raccourcissant la période de validité.
By shortening the LMIA validity period, we will be ensuring that the temporary foreign worker program is being used with the most up-to-date and accurate labor market information.
Encourages employers to prioritize workers that are already here, able and willing to do those roles. I hinted at it just before, but let me be really clear. The third thing we are announcing today is that as of May 1st, we are asking employers that after they consider and offer the job to Canadian citizens, permanent residents, and refugees, that they also now prioritize recruiting asylum seekers and underrepresented groups who have a valid work permit and are ready to work as an additional step before applying for an LMIA to bring a temporary foreign worker to Canada. Finalement, et pour préciser, à partir du 1er mai, nous demandons.
And finally, effective May 1st, we are asking employers that after considering Canadian citizens, permanent residents, and refugees, they prioritize recruiting asylum seekers and underrepresented groups who have a valid work permit and are ready to work as an additional step before applying for an LMIA to hire temporary foreign workers.
Needs of asylum claimants will mean that we have to collaborate with all orders of government. And our federal government is committed to working with our partners to determine how we can best and most efficiently support them. And I look forward to participating in the May meeting, Marc. And I will be also raising the issue with my counterparts at a labor market ministers meeting that'll take place in Winnipeg in June. So let me be clear. The temporary foreign worker program is a last resort. We expect businesses and business owners to exhaust every option and work to prioritize workers here in Canada before applying for temporary foreign workers. Employers should not use the temporary foreign worker program as a means to avoid offering competitive wages to Canadians. They need to innovate and invest in their workforce to make sure that Canada is productive and that our country continues to grow. Finally, it's context. As of January 1 of this year, employers also need to review the wages of temporary foreign workers every year to make sure that they reflect the increases to prevailing wages. So what does that mean? Well, these reviews ensure that employees continue to pay temporary foreign workers at the prevailing wage level throughout their period of employment. And for the vast majority of cases, when wages are reviewed, they're increased for the workers. If not, they remain the same and they can't go down. For temporary foreign workers in this country, we are actively working to screen out any mistreatment or abuse. The security and safety of temporary foreign workers is our collective responsibility, and we must work together with industry to improve conditions, raise wages, and screen out any bad actors. Through these changes, we are ramping down our reliance on temporary foreign work program in certain sectors, making the way for Canadian and permanent residents to gain better access to good jobs. Canada's home to a strong and talented workforce, many of whom are able and ready to meet the needs and challenges of our economy. On that, it's why the federal government has invested in students and training. We've eliminated interest on the federal portion of student loans and forgiven federal student loans for doctors and nurses, a great portion of that for people working in rural communities. And we've invested hundreds of millions of dollars in apprenticeship training to grow our skilled trades workforce. We are also working with partners in provinces and territories to reduce barriers for foreign credential recognition. And these are the kind of investments that are part of the long-term solution that will help build the 21st century workforce. À titre du ministre de l'Emploi, du Développement, de la Main-d'œuvre et des langues officielles, je garde.
As Minister of Employment, Workforce Development, and Official Languages, monitoring the labor market trends and introducing necessary changes that balance labor market needs and our domestic workforce is a part of my job. Today, we are taking the necessary steps, the next steps, to ensure critical labor gaps are filled, workers are supported, and Canada's economy can grow.
In official languages, I'll continue to monitor the labor market trends and introduce necessary changes that will make sure we have that balance between labor market needs and our domestic workforce. That's my job. Today, we're taking steps to ensure that critical labor gaps are filled, that we support workers, and that our economy can grow. Thank you, merci.